and welcome to this little oil painting Q&A video where I'm going to give you 5 answers to 5 questions that I've gotten recently about oil paint. So if we haven't met, hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Blom and I'm a professional fine artist and digital course creator based in beautiful Norway. So in this video, I thought it would be fun to answer some of the questions that I've gotten recently about oil paint. So hopefully if you're new to oil paint and you had any of these questions for yourself, then this video will help you answer those questions and also make you feel like you know oil paint a little bit better. So let's just jump right in and answer question number 1. Now, question number 1, it is, what does the fat over lean rule really mean? So this is a very common question, I think, for anyone starting out with oil paint, because oil painting doesn't really have a lot of rules, but one rule that it does have, which is kind of important to follow, especially if you're painting in layers, it is the fat over lean rule. So I'm going to give you a brief explanation of the fat over lean rule, because I've actually made a video which is entirely about the fat over lean rule, where I give you a lot more information. So I'm going to link to that video as well below this video right here, but I'm going to give you a brief explanation. So basically the fat over lean rule, what it really is all about is that if you're painting with oils and if you're painting in layers, you want those first layers of paint that you put down on your canvas to be thinner, leaner, with less oil, and then you want your later layers of paint to be thicker and fatter with more oil. So you want to build your way gradually up from leaner layers towards fatter, thicker layers of oil paint. Now, the reason for this is because when oil paint dries, it moves. So if the underlying layers are still wet and moving, but the top layers are completely dry, then what can happen is that the top layers might not be flexible enough to move with those underlying layers of paint, and they can crack. Now, obviously, we want our paintings to stand the test of time, and to achieve this, we need to have a healthy painting process, which is why we want to follow the fat over lean rule. Now, like I said, if you would like to get more information about this, the fat over lean rule, then click the link below this video and you will get to know a little bit more about the fat over lean rule, including what types of thinners and mediums you should use as you progress with your painting. Now, the second question that I'm going to answer in this video, it is, what types of brushes should I use if I'm new to oil paint? So if you are new to oil paint and you want to get a little set of a few different brushes to start, then what I would really recommend is that you get a few different types of brushes and a few different sizes. So a good place to start is really to start with the most basic brushes that you have out there, which are classic rounds, filberts, and flats. Get those 3 different types and get them in a few different sizes, and then really see what you prefer to work with. Now, I believe that brushes really are an extension of our hand, and it is the most important tool that we have as painters. So it is a little bit hard to know what really fits each individual person, because I think it's something that you have to experience and experiment with yourself to really get a feel for how you like to work and what kind of brush really fits your style of painting the best. So for me, I really like to work with classic rounds and I really like to work with filberts. Someone else might prefer to work with flats, so it really depends. As far as brands go, I would really recommend Rosemary & Co. They are an amazing producer of brushes. So Rosemary's brushes, I will link to them also below this video so you can check them out. And I'm not sponsored by them in any way. I just really love their brushes. And they have a huge variety of brushes. They are based in England, but they do worldwide shipping and they have great customer service and everything. So and also I want to say that they have really good quality, but they also have really good prices. So they're not like insanely expensive, but they are really, really good quality. And also if you take good care of your brushes, then you can have them for many, many, many years. Now, I also want to say that I don't think you can have too many brushes. So, you know, if you get a brush and you feel like, oh, this brush, I'm not really happy with it, I don't really know how to use it at this point, you know, maybe at a later stage, you actually would love to use that brush. So keep all your brushes, take good care of them, and they can last you for many years. And yeah, so but have fun, experiment, and then really figure out what fits your style of painting best. Okay, so question number 3, it is, how do I avoid getting muddy colors? Now, this one, I think it's a big one. It's a big topic, but I'm going to try and answer it and give you some tips that you can implement right away if you're struggling with muddy colors. So first of all, this is very common, and it's especially common if you're very new to mixing colors and you don't know a lot of color theory. So I would suggest really the place where you start. It is get to know your pigments, get to know colors and color theory in general, because when you know just a little bit about color theory, then you're going to understand how colors really how they work and how they work with each other, and how you can really get the most out of your colors. So start with color theory. I have a PDF about color theory where I go super in detail about all kinds of stuff concerning color theory. So I'm going to link to that below as well, and you can check it out if you're interested in that. But yeah, start with color theory. And then the other tip that I'm going to give is, if you find that you have a very messy palette and you have muddy colors, is stop brush mixing. I find that when I started to pre-mix my colors, so before I started my painting, I sat down and I took a good half hours, sometimes even an hour, and I really looked at the setup that I was painting, or the photo, or whatever I was painting, and I took a really long time to just sit down and mix my colors beforehand. Then I had a much more tidy and organized palette and painting process. So try pre-mixing your colors, and also when you are pre-mixing, try to you know, separate your premixes into different color and value threads. That is also going to organize your palette, and the chances of you getting a messy palette or dirty colors or muddy colors is going to be a lot less. So question number 4, it is, do you ever let your underpainting dry before you paint on top of it? Now, this really depends, I have to say. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. The times where I do, it's typically if I want to use my underpainting in a certain way. So for example, if I want parts of my underpainting to shine through in the final work, then I will usually let it dry. If I plan on using a specific technique on top of my underpainting, like if I want to scumble, which is when you scumble, you basically take a thinner layer of paint without much medium, so just some paint, like a thin layer of dry paint, and you just very gently brush it on top of your painting, or on top of your underpainting. Then I will also let the underpainting dry, because then if the underpainting is wet, everything is just going to mix together, and then it's going to end up looking very messy. So then I let it dry. If I'm working on a big painting, I let it dry. If I spend a long time working on the underpainting and I really make a very resolved underpainting, I usually let it dry. If I paint a smaller painting and I have a very sketchy, loose underpainting, then usually I don't let it dry. Then I just start applying the color mixes like straight on top of my underpainting, even though it's still wet. The reason for this is because I'm a very quick painter, usually, so I will spend usually maximum like 1, maybe 2 days on my paintings, especially if they're like of a smaller size. So, and I kind of like that pace. I don't really like to have to sit around and wait for my underpainting to dry. And I find that because my underpaintings usually are so they are so painted very thinly, so I don't use a lot of paint in my underpaintings, then the underpainting color that I use, it doesn't really interfere too much with my color mixes. Also because I paint very thickly and directly on top of my underpainting, the underpainting doesn't really interfere with the second layer of paint. So it really depends, but hopefully that gave you some pointers. If you are scared of the underpainting pigment mixing in with your color mixes, then just wait a few days and then paint on top of it. But I would say in general, if you are painting and underpainting, you want to try and work with colors that dry quicker. So for example, earth pigments like raw umber, burnt umber, those are great for underpainting. You also want to use a thinner, which is going to speed up the drying time of your painting. So, usually you only have to wait 1 or 2 days in my experience, and it's really ready to paint on top of it, especially if you're painting quite directly on top of your underpainting. Okay, so the very last question I'm going to answer in this Q&A video, it is, what type of medium do you recommend if you want to paint non-toxic? So I have been painting non-toxic for the last 4 years. I've completely stopped using toxic mediums and thinners in my painting practice. And the reason for this is because I actually really react to turpentine, mineral spirits. Like, I become super dizzy if I paint with it. So I try to avoid it at all costs. And with today's options, because there's actually quite a few non-toxic options now on the market, it's really no problem. So as far as mediums go, if you want to paint non-toxic, to be honest, I actually don't use many mediums. Like, I think 9 times out of 10, I don't use mediums at all when I'm painting. The reason for this is because I think the paint is flexible enough as it is when it comes straight out of the tube. But if I want to make the paint a little bit extra flexible or fluid, then I usually have 2 alternatives, 2 options to help me achieve this. So option number 1, it is simply just adding in 1 or 2 drops of linseed oil and just mix that in with your paint. Linseed oil is like really introducing a familiar friend to your paint, because most paint is actually already mixed with linseed oil in the tube. So it's not going to mess with your paint in any way. It's also non-toxic, so that is super great, and it's super easy to get a hold of. I mean, it's any art shop I would imagine out there, they will have linseed oil. So yeah, if you want to use linseed oil, just go to your local art shop and they'll probably have it. Option number 2, if you want to try a non-toxic medium, is I really love to use the Sunlayers Green for Oil medium gel. So it comes in a little tube, and it is quite a solid medium. So it's not like runny, it's a gel. So when you put it on your palette, it's going to hold the shape, which can be really helpful. So you don't have to use those little medium cups and stuff like that on the side of your palette. And I just use like a tiny bit of this, just mix a tiny bit of it in with my paint, and that makes the paint a little bit more flexible. And another thing I really love about this medium is that it speeds up the drying time a little bit. So if you want to speed up the drying time, which I like to do because I'm a bit impatient, then this is a really great medium for that as well. Okay, so those were some answers to some of the questions that I have gotten from you guys during the last few weeks. Now, I really hope that you found it helpful and that I answered some of your questions. If you have more questions, then let me know in the comments, and I will definitely make more of these videos to help you out. So yeah, if you haven't already, if you're new to this channel, I also invite you to subscribe and hit that small bell icon so you always know when I post a new video. I post videos more or less every single week, sometimes even more often, and I talk about oil painting information, inspiration, tips, and advice. So if this is something that you're interested in, definitely hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much for watching. I wish you a wonderful day or evening wherever you are, and lots of inspiration and happy painting. Bye!